Alright, so we're streaming here on the Friday. Let's fire up the TikTok. Let's have some water. Hey everyone. We said that we'd go live Friday, answer questions, talk to people. So we're here. Let me see if I can see chat. I noticed that I'm not seeing chat on the YouTube side, so let's see how that's working. Where are you guys from? Okay, we got the live going on in YouTube. Scotland. Hello, Mackenzie. To start it off, I would say, if you guys aren't familiar with my account and stuff like that, Fresno, California, huh? Nice. I mean, I think it's nice. You hear bad things about California nowadays. But, so I'm an author, and Rafi asked if I'm a believer. I am indeed a believer. I've written a couple of books, one of which is called, I know it's backwards for TikTok, but it's called Maybe Everyone is Wrong, Revelations, Conspiracy, and the Kingdom of Heaven. And this one called Fire in the Rabbit Hole, which is about the New Age cults and weird stuff like QAnon that have been going on and people have been getting sucked into. Somebody says, missed the podcast. Good books, interesting perspectives. Conservative Joe says, have not seen you in a while. How have you been? I've been okay. Personally, I've been okay. I've had some ups and downs just in terms of, my house needing repairs and just, annoying things like that, worldly little concerns. But overall, I'm doing quite well. I put out a new book not long ago, which is, again, this is backwards. I don't know how to mirror it on TikTok when you're doing live, but it's called Rise of the Beast. So if anyone is interested in the prophecy of the beast, this is the book where you can see how thin it is and how small it is. This is basically a little handbook that goes over the actual prophecy of the beast and how it comes to be. And I think that's a very interesting topic that as we get further along and people are more obsessed with the mark of the beast, and you see a lot of content creators yapping about the beast as if they know what they're talking about, but they've never really done a proper study of it. They're just repeating what they heard in pop culture or what somebody in their church said. This one is a compact little book, although this could have been a much bigger book, and I am writing a much bigger book about the beast. But it goes over stuff like Daniel's prophecies of the four kingdoms, the giant statue that has the head of gold and the chest of silver and the the belly and thighs of bronze and the legs of iron. When you understand that, you understand that they already use the beast terminology in Daniel. Like there's the four beasts that rise up out of the sea and conquer the world, and you have one that's a lion that has wings, and the second one is a bear that is raised up on one side, and then there's a cheetah, and then there's a fourth one. And if you read those descriptions, it talks about these beasts as being kingdoms that rule over nations and devour them and destroy them and things like that. And so there's a lot of interesting context that has nothing to do with just a sudden Antichrist appearing at the end of the world. And so this book is sort of a good way. It's very cheap too if you wanted to actually get it. Rise of the Beast. It's like less. I think it's like $5. So the point was to make it very cheap and small so that anybody could sort of pick up on the information. I'm also releasing. Somebody said that they missed the podcast. I did have to shut down my podcast because Spotify changed their terms of service, and they made it so that anybody who uploads audiobook material to Spotify is giving away the rights to the book to, or rather granting a perpetual license to Spotify to use that audiobook any way they want forever. And so you get no royalties even if they were to sell it. You would never get any royalties for anything they do with it. They could do anything they want with that material, and that's insane to just give away the license to your hard work for free. And so I had to delete it because it's just such a dirty trick that they were pulling. And the thing is that pissed me off is that I didn't even sign up for Spotify. I didn't want to have my stuff hosted on Spotify. I was uploading my stuff to a service called Anchor, which then distributes it from there to iTunes and to Spotify and these other places. And then Spotify just bought Anchor. So I made something here. Spotify just came in and bought it. And then they changed the terms of service after they bought it. And so I had been using that service for years beforehand, like close to 10 years. And then I started, I'm putting up my audiobooks for free. And then Spotify comes in and changes the terms of service and says, if you want to host anything on any audiobook material on ours, you're going to have to give us the rights to the book, so that it's not just that you're personally sharing it on your channel and you're allowing us to, obviously distribute it and people can listen to it there. Spotify as the company needs to have the rights to do anything they want with that material forever, which is just crazy. The topic is basically world events and prophecy, I would think. I mean, that's usually what I talk about, the state of things. I have a Substack that I write, and one of the major topics that I've been going into there is the fake Trump assassination, and how he's becoming much more popular based on this, what is, in my opinion, a hoax set up to make him look like he's targeted by the deep state when he's actually not. He is an agent of the deep state. I find that interesting. It's a theory, of course. I mean, I can't prove it, but there's that. And then there's the green agenda. If you're familiar with my work, I've been warning about the green agenda being a prophetic fulfillment for years, of the green rider of Revelation, the fourth rider. And I just like talking about religious views and controversies and whatever you guys are into. Sean says, why can Muslims pray in the streets and Christians can't preach on the corners? Well, you wouldn't expect there to be a single standard for Christianity, right? I mean, in the Bible, Jesus talks about how Christians are going to be targeted and persecuted, and because we have the real truth, people can't stand it. They don't like the truth. Jesus says that the light came into the world, but the darkness hated it. So the world can put up with all sorts of lies, but they can't handle the truth. Rose, hello. Nice to see you. Guys, by the way, thank you for sending in likes. I mean, we've barely talked about anything, and we have almost 500 likes already. If you guys want to talk more about, like, I used to do TikTok videos on just the nature of God and stuff like free will and much more high concept topics like that, evolution, and if somebody wants to debate me and say that they don't believe in God, or they think the God of the Bible is evil or something like that. I've been doing a lot of research into the New Age and why the New Age is wrong. Duck, nice to see you again as well. Sean says, does it boil down to politics or religion? Well, there's really almost no difference between religion and politics in the biblical worldview. Because the Bible, and this is actually a major theme of my book, Rise of the Beast. Once you understand that politics and religion are the same, that every political system is religious and every religious system is political, I say that as I know that Christianity itself does not have a political party or anything like that. What I'm saying is that it's a system that, if it were to take over, would have all these policy implications and would change the way that society behaves and operates and what the laws are and these types of things. So, we are living in the beast system, right? So don't get it mixed up that we're living in some free society that is, neutral and that it's tolerant of Christians and it likes Christians and stuff like that. We are living in the image of the beast, and it's an extension of the Roman Empire that killed Jesus. So, you should expect to be persecuted, and I think for the last couple hundred years, last about 500 years, 400 years, the system that hates Christians has been trying to put us to sleep and make us docile and unaware that we are being targeted, and try to erode Christianity from sort of this passive numbing effect. Instead of coming at us directly and attacking us and forbidding us and censoring us, it is about trying to dumb us down to the point where we'll accept things like the New Age teachings of spirituality, the meditation and yoga and all these types of things. I see that we have, Trump supporters here. Trump is a perfectly good psyop for Christians, and a lot of people are falling for it. I would recommend that you guys who are Trump supporters now, that you just beware that it's a psyop. He is controlled opposition, and he's not a Christian. In fact, he said recently in an interview that he's not Christian. In a rally, he said he's not Christian. So, and I wrote about that on my Substack. You can go look it up and see the video clip. He's telling Christians to go vote, but then he says, I'm not Christian, but my beautiful Christians, I want you to go out and vote and whatever. So, he believes in God, but he is not a Christian. And, his beliefs are very vague. So, oh yes, he did. I have the video clip on my Substack. It was at let me actually just look it up, and, I can't play the clip here, but somebody says he never said that. Let's just get that out of the way. So my Substack post is called Trump's Final Solution. I'm not a Christian, and you don't have to vote. You won't have to vote anymore. I posted this on July 27th. If you listen to the clip, he says, "I'm not Christian." He shakes his head. He says, "I'm not Christian." And, he says that after this time voting, you won't have to vote anymore. And this was in a rally in West Palm Beach, Florida. So, Trump is selling NFTs and golden sneakers and rambling about nonsense. He really doesn't have any good platform. He doesn't have a platform. His platform is just, I'm not Joe Biden, I'm not Kamala Harris. And then the fake assassination attempt is designed to make him seem like he's a dangerous Kennedy-like figure who the deep state is targeting. It's a psyop, in my opinion. It's not just that that's what I think I heard. That's what the audio says in the playing of the audio. He's never claimed to really be Christian. You notice that he doesn't actually ever invoke Jesus or talk about Christianity. It's anyway. That's so much more. If more people are interested in talking about that, we can get into more of Trump. But on just a more fundamental level, he's a politician responsible for locking down the entire country, and in effect, doing this, destroying the world economy, printing trillions of dollars and giving it to the richest people, destroying the middle class, creating all the hyperinflation that we have today. He calls himself the father of the mRNA vaccines, Operation Warp Speed. He did everything that the deep state wanted. If you're concerned about that, he's not being persecuted. He's being presented as a persecuted figure so that people will buy into him. So the Christians specifically will buy into him because they want to deceive Christians more than anything. Wealthgistics says, I concur. It's all about moving into digital currency. Trump and Elon chat on Monday. Yeah, and Trump went to a Bitcoin rally. He said that he wants America to be the home of Bitcoin. The U.S. dollar is being scheduled for an implosion. And once that happens, it's very likely that Bitcoin or a Bitcoin equivalent, that the public won't really know the difference. It'll be a CBDC or some sort of other digital currency that is controlled by the State Department or the federal government, or an international bank of some kind. They can go and control the currency and then put rules into how the currency works and all that kind of stuff. Bitcoin, of course, is not private. It is literally a ledger of every transaction. So every transaction that has ever been made on Bitcoin is supposed to be tracked. It is actually the opposite of private. It is transparent. And so, everything that has happened with a particular Bitcoin can be tracked in theory. And that becomes very weird in a legal sense for, the currency itself being manipulated. It is not safe from hacking, all these types of things. So there's a lot of what Trump represents right now is a deep state puppet trying to get the population, especially Christians, to buy into a new age bizarro cult, where they're going to destroy the Constitution, destroy the U.S. currency, and rewrite the rules of how America works. And then you're going to have your, supposed Christ-like Messiah figure come in and save Christianity from the pedophile deep state, QAnon, conspiracy theory thing. I wrote about this in my book, Fire in the Rabbit Hole, talking about QAnon being a military psyop. So it is not, and I'm Canadian, right? I would never even humor the idea of voting for any American political figure and seeing, not only could I not vote, but um, if you're a real Christian and you believe in the Bible, there is no evidence in the Bible that you should be invested in political narratives. You should be doing God's will and serving the kingdom of God. That is your kingdom. That is your state that you are trying to serve. You have a king. You do not need a president. You have a king. And you are serving the kingdom. The politicians in the country you happen to live in, I have Justin Trudeau as my prime minister, as if that means anything to me. It's give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. Do not get, somebody said, buy gold. That's why what my family has done. If you're not physically possessing bars of gold, I wouldn't trust that at all. If you do actually have a hoard of real gold, I guess then if the society collapses, you can go and smelt it into coins and try to pawn it with people and do some sort of transactions in the future. But if the shit hits the fan and you really we get into like a post-collapse society, there are going to be so many military grade operations being launched. It will not be like some sort of liberation of these, almost like a romanticized survivalist fantasy of how to go about trading with people and farming on your own land and whatever. There will be FEMA camps. There will be military operations in every single state. The militias and the National Guard will come into effect, and there will be just giant waves of crackdowns because they'll have to maintain order. And so gold, just having gold on hand, is very unlikely to actually help you when stuff goes down and when there's a collapse. It's only loves its bars. We've been doing that for over 30 years now. I wish you well in that. Personally, here's how I'm looking at it. I think that Christians are going to be demonized because of what Israel is doing, and the fact that Trump is going to be, because I do think Trump is being selected for the next president. He's going to be made to look like they don't want him to be president, but he's very clearly being set up, and every time they persecute him, his numbers go up higher and higher, and nobody hits him on his actual weaknesses. None of the interviewers and the CNN and these other fake media companies, they don't actually go after his weaknesses. They just say stupid stuff that makes them look bad, and then his numbers go up again. So Sean, no, I did not go to university. I dodged that bullet, thankfully. I know people who did go to university who were smart, in high school, and all of them came back dumber and indoctrinated and in debt. So thankfully I did not. I'm sure there's nice things you can do there and you can get some practical knowledge, but no, I have not. University is essentially a reading list. If you actually think about what university is, and I've talked to professors who agree with this, it's a reading list. They give you a list of reading material, and then your assignments and your reports and things are just basically proof that you have read those books and you've done the research on these books. And you can get reading lists from a lot of places without having to actually go to university. So aside from that, university is about making connections and a social effect and a career building sort of stuff. But The Church of the Seven Rays theory I have not heard about. MT Toast says, you just do not get Bitcoin. Well, I mean, I've done as much research as pretty much any sort of moderate researcher would on it. I'm not obsessed with Bitcoin. But, I track websites that, actually keep track of what is happening with Bitcoin. And you do have many wallets being stolen physically, or you've had the government come in and just confiscate them. You've had all the exchanges being targeted. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with Bitcoin exchanges and cryptocurrency exchanges. And, it's like whether it ends up being a good replacement for the US dollar in some sense, it's extremely vulnerable to regulation because of the fact that mining it is so electrical intensive. You can actually have regulation already that anyone who mines Bitcoin in the United States is supposed to disclose their personal information, and there can be regulations on what they can do because they're just sucking energy off the power grid so much, and it's considered to be bad for the environment. So the green agenda can come in and screw with Bitcoin miners, and it's not as I respect the idea, the libertarian, decentralized sort of idea. I do, because I'm a libertarian at heart. And I don't want the federal government to control the currency and stuff like that. But Bitcoin is a CIA, a deep state, DARPA project to begin with. So they're going to use it for their own purposes. And you can go look at the plans of the military 60, 70 years ago, and they're talking about collapsing the federal government and creating what seems to be a decentralized state. It's called the Aquarian Conspiracy. I did a podcast that should be out later today or tomorrow with Hrvoje Morić of Geopolitics and Empire, and we talked about some of that exact stuff, that the decentralization, the collapse of our system, it's sort of a controlled demolition implosion. And then from that, they want to create a quote-unquote decentralized government, but that decentralized government is actually going to just be a more subtle form of government where you don't really have representation, and it's more controlled by the military, and that's a whole rabbit hole we could go down. But It's Only Love says, all school is this, but many love to have a specialty job. Yeah, I mean, if you get a real career out of university, then, good for you. I did not have a particular interest in a university level job. And, engineers are amazing. Obviously, there's a lot of engineers who didn't go to university. If you know people who grew up on farms and were just tinkering on machinery and plumbing and all these types of things, and they just sort of learned it as an apprentice from somebody they knew and stuff. You don't need a university for a lot of the good trades and that kind of stuff. But I would say probably 75-80% of people who go to university do not have a real plan, and they just go to English and sociology and these things that really don't help them, and then they just walk away in debt. It's Only Love says, well, Sleepy Joe was selected. Maybe it's our turn now. I guess. I mean, if you actually think that the country is going to turn around and the world is going to become a better place in the next 4 years if Trump gets in power, I don't think you're reading the signs of the times very wisely. I mean, look at Trump's stance on Israel and what's going to happen there if that blows up with Iran, and not literally blowing up, but just, the Iran-Israel situation. Trump is basically a Zionist. He is going to go along with whatever they want. He said that if he gets targeted, I believe he wrote on his social media that if he gets targeted, by the way, we have some people on YouTube. So hello, Brooks, Barrow, Henry, Susie, and Bloody Cheetah. It's taken a while for the YouTube chat to catch up, but if you send something there, I can also read it there. And Rox13 showed up. Hello, long time no see, Mr. Wolf. Got the salt shaker emoji. That is an old school supporter right there. Understands my brand and community. So that's nice to see. Sean says, I know a lot of stupid engineers. No real life experience to apply to the situations. Sure. That's why, practical hands-on apprenticeship and real problem solving is the best. And you don't need a university for that. You just need the opportunity and the invitation to go along with somebody who does know what they're doing and learn from being an apprentice kind of thing, right? So one of the most common questions that I get from people on my Substack and back when I was doing a lot more stuff on TikTok is about what to do in case of the system collapsing, of there being a breakdown in law and order and chaos and riots. And obviously that completely depends on whether you're living inside one of these big cities, if you're living out in a rural area, and if your options are completely different and your problems are going to be very different. The logistics, the trucking and rails and bridges and all these types of things can all be targeted. But that's why it's like Christ's advice to us and the Bible's advice to us is so perfect when he just says, do not even worry about how you'll survive tomorrow. He says, sufficient is today for the evil. There's enough evil just for today. You don't have to worry about tomorrow. He talks about the sparrows and the birds that don't sow and don't reap and don't do any of those things, and yet God feeds them and takes care of them. That's what faith is. There's a lot of things that go into faith in Christ's sacrifice and a lot of the theological deeper meanings too, but it's also just a simple faith of that God is in control of world events. He's in control of your daily life. And so you really are not supposed to have any fear about what's going to happen. And if you do, it's kind of a sign that your Christianity is weak. It's like you're supposed to have the kind of faith that rejects fear. And obviously, the American media system is built on fear. And then people go into, what can we do about it? What is our next step? How do we strategize? How do we rally? When do we congregate? How do we, and it all becomes more and more, you can see how that all becomes more and more open to manipulation. You get false leaders who come in and want to steer you in a certain direction. They promise certain things. That's basically what my book Fire in the Rabbit Hole is all about, is these fake rabbit holes, these fake solutions that come up, and they all suspiciously sort of lead in the same direction, which is this glorification of a collapse and a rebirth and this opportunity to fix the world. You're not going to fix the world. The Bible says that deception is going to continue to get worse and worse until the end. And with deception, once you have deception, everything else breaks. Because without the truth, you don't have any solution. So I don't like to argue with Christians who are dead set on being survivalists. I know people who have moved to different countries. I've done podcasts with a nice couple that moved to they were Norwegian, and they moved to Panama. And they're living, they're trying to find a home there and integrate into Panama to try to live almost off the grid and that kind of stuff. It's like, I understand the fear and the desire to escape something corrupt. But that's not what Jesus did, and that's not what we are taught to do. We're not taught to go and strategize for the best way of surviving. We're taught to sort of live in the world but not be of the world. We're supposed to be different from other people but peaceful, productive if we can be. But basically, you're going to have to be vulnerable to oppression and to evil. And, you live like sheep among wolves is what Jesus said that we would be. And a sheep doesn't defend itself. That's a very basic fact about sheep. And whereas wolves are predators. And so what does it mean to be a sheep among wolves? It means that you are the defenseless one, surrounded by a bunch of people who think of you as being prey. That's literally what we're told to be. I mean, I don't know why people just ignore that, like it's not what Jesus said, but it is what he actually said. Wealthgistics says, no, it's a 1-2 punch. Trump starts it, Biden enforces it, then Trump again for the crypto. I'm Wealthgistics. I think that you're saying sort of the same thing I am there, where it's like, I think that the U.S. political race system thing, it's not perfectly scripted, decades in advance, and then they just sort of roll out a perfect scheme. There's no such thing as a perfect conspiracy. But I actually think that Trump's first 4 years in office went so well. He was creating so much prosperity and getting America sort of back on track that he actually provoked them into saying, okay, well, now you have to roll out this lockdown. You have to destroy the economy that you helped build up. You have to print these trillions of dollars and give them to corporations. You basically have to destroy America, and then it'll get so bad that we can now proceed to the next phase where America has these mRNA vaccines and these things that are going to be pushed onto everyone, forced onto everyone, and then he basically has to sacrifice what he helped build up. And he didn't want to, right? So he was fighting it. Trump definitely wants to be an independent person. So I will grant him that. He does not like being a puppet. But you see what happens. They steal the election. That's my opinion. Now, people say, obviously, I could probably be banned for even suggesting that, but that's my opinion. I'm a Canadian. I don't care about being banned anymore. So, I believe that they stole the election from him very blatantly in the most obvious stolen election we've ever seen. And it was not because, he's a hero, but because he needed to learn a lesson. And so these last 4 years have been a humbling experience for Trump, where they sue him, they convict him of crimes and all these things like that. So there's some truth to that. But in order to get back into office, he then has to submit to his masters and say, okay, I will come back. Please give it to me again, but then I will do what you want. I will see through this collapse of the U.S. dollar, and I will push through your agenda. And I wrote a Substack about that. It's called Donald Lockdown Trump is begging the deep state to let him finish the job. I wrote that in November of 2022. So years ago, I wrote that. And for those who don't know my Substack, that is where I do most of my work now. So it is Winter Christian, one word, winterchristian.substack.com. So if you use Substack already, you just look up Winter Christian or Terry Wolf. If you don't use Substack, you can just go to that URL directly or Google it or whatever, winterchristian.substack.com, and you get lots of articles. I am mostly a writer. I'm not mostly a video creator or streamer. And so there's a lot of good stuff there, a lot of theological things, a lot of topics just for Christians. And and sort of Bible studies. I love doing Bible studies on there. Rock says, the scripture says that go to the mountains. Was that towards the Jews only? Yes, that is a prophetic description to, he says, look, those who are in Jerusalem at that time, flee to the mountains, and those who are in this part of the world flee at this time. And I believe that will be literally those people at that time. They are going to have the man of sin with them. They are going to be part of the abomination of desolation. And so it's a very specific warning. And, if you look at the New Testament epistles and stuff like that, actually, let's look at a very interesting part of Revelation. I believe it's probably Revelation chapter 2, where he says, I'm just looking it up here. Okay, so Revelation chapter 2, verses, let's start at verse 8. To the angel of the church of Smyrna write, these are the words of the first and the last, who died and returned to life. I know your affliction and your poverty, though you are rich, and I am aware of the slander of those who falsely claim to be Jews, but are in fact a synagogue of Satan. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. So listen to the language here, because I got the sun in my eyes here, so excuse that. Instead of saying flee and go build a bunker and go hoard gold and do all these practical steps, you would think, if Jesus really wants his followers to be survivalists and to, just protect their families and their loved ones and stuff like that in this sort of common sense, worldly fashion, he says, do not fear what you are about to suffer. That's verse 10. Look, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison to test you. So Jesus knows when a Christian is going to be sent to prison. He knows it ahead of time. So it's not an accident. It's not a whoopsie. It's not, something that God screwed up and now a Christian got put in prison. Obviously, we're talking about false imprisonment. We're talking about false charges. This is not a proper judicial system that is convicting these people and whatever. It says the devil is about to throw some of you into prison to test you. So in Jesus' way of thinking about it, going to prison falsely under false charges is just a test. That's all it is. It's just a test. Are you going to remain faithful or are you not? And it says, and you will suffer tribulation for 10 days. Okay, so there's 10 days. What happens after 10 days? Do you get released? Are you just supposed to be patient and suffer for a little bit and then you go back to your normal life? No, the very next sentence is, be faithful even unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. So, right there, you have after Jesus' ministry on earth, he ascends to heaven. John goes and receives this vision and this prophecy from Jesus. Jesus talks to these churches. So we're not talking about him talking to the Jews anymore. Smyrna is, however many Jews are there, he says, beware the slander of those who falsely claim to be Jews, but are the synagogue of Satan. So he's talking about a Gentile population, most likely. And so this would be the more appropriate thing to look at for advice on how to live today. I'm not saying that it applies completely, but certainly it's more directly talking to Christian believers who belong to a church, who are Gentiles, after his initial ministry. And he says, do not fear what you're about to suffer. The devil is going to throw some of you in prison to test you. You will suffer tribulation. And what are you supposed to do about it? Are you supposed to run? Are you supposed to pick up guns and fight? Obviously, back then they would have had swords and spears or whatever. Does he say go buy weapons and protect yourself and hire a lawyer and try to defend yourself legally and financially and militarily and create a militia and train your kids how to kill the enemy and blah blah blah? No, none of that. Nothing even close to that. Literally just these terrible things that are going to happen to you. That's just a test of your faith. Be faithful to death, and then I will give you a crown of life. And the implication is, if you do not follow these instructions, if you are not willing to be imprisoned falsely, and you are not willing to suffer tribulation, and you are not willing to be faithful to the death, to be put to death unjustly, you will not get the crown of life. That's the implication. If you are faithful unto death, I will give you a crown of life. The inverse of that is, if you do not patiently allow yourself to be killed by the state, because that's what's happening here, you will not get the crown of life. This is why I always try to tell people, do not try to be a hero. That is not what Christianity is. Christianity is not a political system of reforming society to become more moral and just and make the world a better place. That is so far from what Christianity is. It is a profound understanding of how the world really works. It is prophetic. It is about how the devil rules the world. The devil has this power. Our job is to be sheep among wolves. It is to be pacifists and to be harmless and innocent, even while the world is targeting us and being evil. And so that's such a different way of looking at it. And you can see right here that the rewards for being a Christian are actually dependent upon being faithful in that way and not panicking and not being afraid. I think fear is the number one indicator that somebody's Christianity is lacking. Hello, Jay Thompson. Very nice to see you again. I remember you certainly from the many times you've joined my streams, and we've had a chance to talk before, so thank you for that. Thank you for saying hi. I also see Kenan on YouTube. Hello. If you guys want to ask more questions or bring up more topics, I'm just sort of here reacting to how people feel about the situation and how Christianity plays into, our messed up world where everything is wrong and only getting worse. And the things that don't get worse are usually false, and it's fake hope. And I don't want people to have false hope. That's the big thing for me. I don't want people to have false hope. Put your hope where it actually will pay off, which is in Jesus Christ and in salvation and, the next world. Do not put your faith in this world and any figure here or any movement here that you think is going to save us and, we can fix the world. That's just not how it works. And on TikTok, thank you guys for the 2,800 likes. That's great because it invites more people into the stream. So, really my message that I keep giving, it keeps coming back to the same few things. The world is bad. It's getting worse. But this is all prophecy. And so it's not something to despair over or be afraid of. It's actually good that God is fulfilling his promises and doing the things that he said he was going to do, and that the world is following the script that God wrote in advance. And that's what my book, Maybe Everyone Is Wrong, does. It walks through Revelation and shows how this is about the rise of Satan's global conspiracy to control the world, and how that all ultimately culminates in the church being persecuted and wiped out. And after that, you've got the 144,000 in Israel. Israel has to become more and more corrupt before it can, before the final return of Jesus and the deliverance from all of the evil that goes on there. It's a very interesting story that the Bible lays out for us, and it's supposed to comfort us. Kenan says, nice to see you, Terry. Yeah. Hey, Kenan, if you have questions or comments, or just, you've a certain thing you've wanted to get my opinion on, just go ahead and ask. Jay Thompson says, what about defending those that are innocent? Like if you see someone being robbed or hurt? And Jokin Comic says, this is a question I had with resisting as a Christian. What is our role when they come for us? Okay, so I don't have the book on hand, but I do have the book. It is called Martyr's Mirror. It is a book that is like that thick. It is like 1,600 pages or something like that. It's this huge book. And it is a history of martyrs since the time of Jesus. Oh, the sun is right in my eyes. Sorry about that. It is a history of martyrs going back a long time. And it's very clear that from the time of Christ till the 1600s, when this book was written, Christians have put their lives, they have given their lives in a way that is peaceful, pacifist. They pray, they trust God. Now, this is going to get into the question of random violence versus persecution for your faith. A lot of people think that you're only supposed to be sort of defenseless and pacifist if you are being persecuted for your faith specifically, and that a random mugging or a random act of violence or something like that is different, and that we're supposed to defend ourselves from that. We have no evidence of that. Show me a verse where Jesus authorizes or condones or shows himself an example of self-defense. I'm going to close this window here just a second, guys. Let's see if that's better. So yeah, I talk about this a lot in my different streams and stuff like that. It's like we can find the verses where Jesus I told you guys this verse from Smyrna where he says, be faithful to death. The question of defending those that are innocent, defending them with violence, I don't see any permission given to do that. I think in the Martyr's Mirror, you have examples, and they're very heartbreaking, of families and fathers who were targeted by the Spanish Inquisition or the Catholic Inquisition, where the entire family was captured and they were tortured, they were sexually abused, they were horribly tortured and murdered by this Catholic Inquisition. And they were just Bible-believing Christians. They had done nothing wrong. And the accounts that we have of those people, those martyrs, is that they prayed, they encouraged each other, they, told each other that they will see each other again soon in the next life. They did not defend themselves. Hang on. Sorry about that. The TikTok was requiring me to reauthorize the stream for some reason. So in the Martyr's Mirror, you have this. Oh, and thank you for the people who are sending roses and stuff, and thank you for everyone who taps the screen and sends likes to this. We're getting into controversial territory, which is what I love, and so obviously I had nothing prepared, but let's talk about this more. Wealthgistics also says, we go to heaven or sleep till judgment. There are humans allowed into heaven or just renewed earth? Great question as well. So let's try to get through some of these, and then we can follow up, with people's questions. So the short answer is, if you see someone being robbed or hurt, it is not your obligation to help them. I believe that if you don't do any serious or lasting injury to somebody, there's nothing wrong with restraining somebody. There's nothing wrong with, pushing, restraining somebody, holding them down, taking away a weapon. There's a lot of things you can do to help somebody without shooting them in the head or killing them or something like that, right? So there's a big difference between a non-injuring, non-permanent injury sort of thing versus helping somebody. I also think that in a lot of cases, just yelling at somebody or threatening them in the sense of like showing that you're there and you see that and you warn them, kind of thing, that's another way of helping. Most people will flee if they're confronted. And so there's, a level of bravery there, because we're not supposed to be afraid of, it's not that we don't defend ourselves because we're cowards. It's that we are supposed to patiently endure the things of this world that are evil. And so I think you can help people without hurting others. And if you can't, at that point, it is not your place to kill anyone, no matter how extreme the circumstance is, because you are not the judge of that person. You do not get to pass sentence on them. And for an innocent person to suffer is obviously tragic. It's the definition of tragedy. But at the same time, that's God's place to enact revenge and to be the judge. So you have to keep in mind that this whole life, our whole world, is the temporary. The eternal is what God is going to do. An injustice in this life is repaid in eternity by God. So, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. That is a biblical principle that extends all the way to the end of history. And so I do not think that we should be arming ourselves, carrying knives or guns or, something like that. But if you wanted to carry mace or something like that, I mean, that to me is already like, you're not really living in faith, because even the things that you think are coincidental incidences in your lives, car accidents and, bad encounters with strangers and stuff, all of this is within God's purview, and He is in control. So nothing random is going to happen to you. There's actually really nothing random that is going to happen to a believer. And the Bible repeatedly talks about how we learn patience by enduring bad things, and we have to just go through it and trust God and learn from it, and ultimately think about it. No matter what you do in this life, you will die, either from sickness or from a tragedy, an accident, from an execution. Maybe the government, captures you and executes you. Billions of people have been killed that way. No matter what, you do not survive forever. And God is the one who determines when your life ends, not anybody else. There's a verse that I love that I'm just going to share to wrap this up for now. So Matthew 10, verse 28. Matthew 10, verse 28. Um, let's start at verse 26. Jesus says, "So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered that will not be revealed, or nothing is hidden that will not be known. What I tell you in the dark, say in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? And not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father." Capital F, God, Father. "But even the hairs of your head are all numbered." This is not exaggeration. This is not poetic language. Literally, God has an inventory account, knowledge of every single hair on your head, everything that you could possibly lose. What you are is perfectly defined. Not even a sparrow falls to the ground without the Father knowing about it. We're talking about absolute awareness and involvement in the world, that none of this goes unnoticed. So there's nothing random happening in the life of a believer. Verse 31, "Fear not, therefore." Again, fear not. Do not be afraid. "You are of more value than many sparrows. So everyone who acknowledges me before men, I will acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny before my Father who is in heaven." And right there you have this beautiful reminder that we're not supposed to fear those who can destroy the body but cannot hurt the soul, because Jesus is shifting the emphasis from this world to the next world. People can kill your body here, but they cannot touch your soul. So what are you afraid of? The next world is so much more important. So don't be afraid. Cindy says hello on YouTube. Nice to see you, Cindy. Kenan says you can use tasers and OC spray. Do you think that we have punishment in this life due to past sins? Good question. Kenan says, "I'm curious, does Matthew 10 verse 34 to 36 apply to fighting in the church, or is it more general in the worldly sense?" Matthew 10, 34 to 36. Well, we were just reading Matthew 10. Okay. So this is a direct continuation from where I left off. "Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth," Jesus says. "I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law. And a person's enemies will be those of his own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." A lot of translations say whoever saves his life, but whoever finds his life is more literal, so that's good. So this is clearly talking about a pacifist approach, I think, because you can see he says, "Whoever does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me." And the cross is the sort of ultimate representation of being persecuted and dying without defending yourself. I mean, you're literally nailed to this thing without even being able to move your hands and legs, and you have no ability to defend yourself. You're completely vulnerable and open, and you will die in that process. So taking your cross is very different than taking weapons and, taking something else you could carry. And so if you're choosing to take the cross, that means you're rejecting all the alternatives to the cross. You are rejecting the option of self-defense. So it's definitely not talking about really fighting and your enemies being something you have to fight. And you can also look at Paul's letters where he says that we do not war against flesh and blood. We war against spirituality and principalities and powers and high places and spiritual battles. And so even when we have enemies, we are supposed to love our enemies and bless those who curse us. You remember Jesus saying that. And take up our cross, and we don't fight physical battles. So again, over and over consistently, it is pacifist, it is spiritual, and we are supposed to be a better example. That is what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to stoop to the worldly, natural way of responding to conflicts and enemies and things like that. So these are all really good questions. And I don't know if you guys are experiencing a lot of violence and threats and stuff like that. I know in some cities crime is very high, but I also feel like it's very strange how many Christians obsess over the theory of being robbed and the theory of being assaulted and attacked when it's not actually happening. Like, why are you even thinking about it if it's not happening? You of all the things you could be concerned with, it's like everyone is preparing for that possibility. And I think that is a type of fear. It is like anticipation of something that is in God's hands. And you should just be looking for opportunities to help people or to improve yourself, rather than worrying about whether you're allowed to do something under the Christian rule set. Are you allowed to hurt somebody if these and these circumstances are fulfilled? Why are you even dwelling on that? If you have, okay, I get it. If you have kids, if you have a wife, and you've got things you love and you want to protect them, obviously that's why you think about those things, right? But still, I just read you the passage from Matthew 10 here where every hair of your head is numbered and not even a sparrow falls to the ground without the Father knowing about it. We're talking about a God who is not going to allow random things to happen in that way. That's what I believe. I can keep making that case, but let's try to get to other questions here. I think I answered Jokin Comics' question about resisting. Wealthgistics says, we go to heaven or sleep till judgment. I personally have a little bit of a nuanced view of this, and I'm very glad you asked that. I hope you're still here, Wealthgistics. It is very clear that Jesus talks about the dead as being asleep over and over and over again. And yet in the Revelation, we see that there are some who go to heaven in advance of Judgment Day or, the resurrection. And so how do you reconcile that people are asleep and yet some of them are in heaven already praising God and throwing down their crowns and, fulfilling these little roles that they have in heaven before the resurrection? And I believe the answer to that is actually kind of interesting, that if you listen to what the Bible says about those who are in heaven, every single time they give them information about who those people are, they are martyrs. They are those who have died and have been invited up to heaven almost as a special invitation. So I think as a rule, and this is deduction, okay? This is not, I can't point you to a specific verse, but I do make the case in my books that the description of those who are in heaven today, and the congregation in heaven gets bigger and bigger as Revelation goes on, and you see millions of people by the end. But at first, you don't see that many. So Revelation tells the story of thousands of years of history, And at first, there's very few people in heaven. There's a lot of angels, but there's not a lot of people, a lot of Christians. There's the 24 elders, and other than that, there's really not much. But by the end, there's millions of people who have washed their robes, and God will wipe away their tears, and they came from great tribulation. And I believe those people, it's not a rapture, it is the people who have laid down their life, listened to what Jesus said, been patient to the death, and they've been killed for their faith. You can go to Revelation chapter 6 and look up the fifth seal being broken, and you have this scene in heaven where there are these martyrs, and I'll just read it quickly here. When he opened the fifth seal, meaning Jesus opens the fifth seal, I saw under the altar those souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the witness they had borne. They cried out with a loud voice, O sovereign Lord, holy and true, how long will you judge, and how long before you will judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? So these are very clearly people in heaven, not asleep, in heaven, but they got killed. They got martyred. And they're asking God, how long are you going to take before you avenge us? And in verse 11 it says, then they were given white robes and told to rest a little longer until the number of their fellow servants and brothers should be complete, who were to be killed as they themselves had been. Different translations will say that this is basically until the rest of the brothers and fellow servants were killed. And so here you have an example of martyrs in heaven getting invited there. You can see that they just showed up, right? They're literally saying it's still going on on earth. There's still a massacre, a genocide of Christians happening on earth. Why are you not avenging us? Because they, as Christians, don't even understand. Even though they're going to heaven, they still don't understand what I'm telling you right now, which is that it's okay. God doesn't have to avenge you. The pre-tribulation rapture theory that God is not going to allow us to suffer is completely fake and wrong. This verse debunks pre-tribulation rapture. God will literally look at the martyrs who go up to heaven. He'll invite them up to heaven, and he'll say, just chill out. There's a whole bunch of other people who have to die still. And I'm not going to intervene with any of it. I'm not going to stop it from happening. This is prophecy. So wear your white robes, rest a little longer, it says, until this rest of the people are killed. Very brutal if you want to read it as a response to these Christians who are pleading for vengeance. But at the same time, those people should have understood that our prophecy has to be fulfilled. It's not about God suddenly jumping in to save you from a problem. Prophecy is going to be fulfilled. And so right there, you have proof that there are martyrs who go up to heaven. They themselves can be confused. So it's not, if you're confused about this stuff, it doesn't disqualify you from going to heaven. Thank God. It's not salvation. You're not going to lose your salvation if you're confused about this. But these people did lose their lives for the gospel, for testimony they had about Jesus. And they're confused about what's happening, and they still went to heaven. Very interesting thing. This is why I had to write a book on it. For those who do not know, I wrote this book, Maybe Everyone is Wrong, Revelations, Conspiracy in the Kingdom of Heaven. I talk about all this stuff in there. It was very eye-opening to do the research for that book. And most people who die a natural death, I believe, are asleep. So if you just die from some health condition or whatever, not because you were persecuted and suffered because of your faith, I believe you have a type of soul sleep. I don't want to get into the whole baggage of that term because I know some people use that in weird ways. But just, you can go read the verses where Jesus talks about people being asleep. And I would add, and I always like to add this, that sleep is not being completely devoid of any sensation. In other words, you can wake up somebody who's sleeping. They still hear. You can still hear stuff while you're asleep. You're unconscious, but you are still aware of your surroundings to that extent. So, can somebody whose soul is asleep, who has died, can they experience any feelings? Can they experience any sensations? Can they hear, for example, God speaking or something like that? Well, theoretically, yes, they could. And that is why when Jesus goes to Lazarus, he says that Lazarus was asleep. And then his disciples are confused. They're like, well, if he's sleeping, let him rest, because sleep is good for you. And he says no, or somebody in there realizes that he's actually dead. And so Jesus thinks of raising the dead as calling to somebody who's asleep and just waking them up. That's how responsive the dead souls are to, or the dead bodies, the dead people are to the voice of God. They can hear God if he speaks to them. So it is a more nuanced and interesting picture of the afterlife than you have from pop culture and from the Catholic Church and from tradition, where you have most people being asleep until the resurrection, and those who are in heaven, they come back with Jesus when he comes down to earth. And so one of the things you should be looking forward to, thank you, by the way, for 4,500 likes on TikTok. That's great. Thank you for those who are tapping the screen and bumping up the algorithm here for this stream, because this is a proper Bible study. So I don't know how much of that there is on Revelation, or sorry, on TikTok, especially regarding Revelation and the afterlife and stuff like that. You get a lot of people debating and just arguing, but not a lot of people doing a proper Bible study. I love your guys' questions. I'm thankful for that, and thank you for those who are in kind, giving likes and things like that. You don't need to send roses and the TikTok rewards, but I do appreciate that. And so, most people asleep, but I think it is maybe not a total numbness of any sensation, like a void. There might still be a vague sense of what's happening without really understanding the passage of time, because that's a big thing when you're asleep. When you're asleep, you don't understand how much time has passed. And so maybe the people who die have some awareness, but they're not experiencing hundreds of years, and getting bored and frustrated and whatever. You wouldn't expect that. But I think even just the analogy of sleep is enough to get us to understand what it would be like in some way. And then those who get invited to heaven, like the thief on the cross. This is why it's important to look at the thief on the cross situation. The thief on the cross was told, "Today you will be with me in paradise." And everyone who dislikes the sleep analogy will point to him and say, this is proof that we don't sleep, because he's going to be in paradise that same day. Okay, but look at what happened. Jesus, who is God, literally invited him personally by speaking to him and saying, "Today you will be with me in paradise." That is an invitation. That is a specific individual invitation given to one person who was on the cross and testified about Jesus. And then he died. So we're talking about actually something much closer, even though that guy didn't die because he was a follower of Jesus. He is nonetheless testifying about Jesus as he's dying. So his final moments are spent glorifying Jesus. And so for that reason, Jesus invites him to heaven, and Jesus has the power to do that. And so I think that's that builds my case that actually he's an exception to the rule. And we should want to be like him, where we spend our last time praising God instead of being afraid and pleading and worrying about ourselves and stuff like that. We need to trust God, and that's what you see in heaven is a bunch of martyrs and people who have done that. Dee's Prepper says, so watch your wife being graped. I pray God will forgive me because I can't. I think you just said it pretty well, right? Like, first of all, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of real examples historically of Christians whose wives were assaulted in front of them as a punishment for being a Christian in order to provoke a Christian man into committing violence, which in turn then justifies or is taken as a threat, and then they go and they kill the man, and now the woman, not only did she get assaulted, now her husband was also killed because he tried to attack them. They kill him because they attack. It's a trap. It's horrible. It's evil. Obviously, if you can win, if you can defeat your enemy and kill them or whatever, well, now you have to account to God why you killed somebody. When God specifically said you have to love your enemies, turn the other cheek, and bless those who curse you and persecute you. Your wife, in the biblical sense, is considered to be your property. I know people don't like to hear that, but that is just how the Bible phrases it. It is how the Bible, New Testament, doesn't change that. You're supposed to love your wife, but an attack on your wife is also an attack on you, is what I'm saying. It is an attack on something that you are in charge of. And you're not really supposed to defend your property. You're not really supposed to. You can do common sense precautions. You should obviously use common sense to try to avoid problems. But we don't have any example of being told to fight to protect your household or your property. We don't see people being told to, treat their wives as, it says that you should die for your wife. You should treat your wife like Jesus treats the church. But look at what Jesus does when his followers are being killed. See, now, this just occurred to me, okay? We are the bride of Christ. We are literally his wife. I shouldn't say literally. We are figuratively his wife. The church. And what happens to the church? The church is killed. The church is persecuted. It is robbed. It is slandered. It is attacked. Go back to ancient Rome. Go back to all the period of the Inquisition and all the tribulation that has happened to Christians. The wife of Jesus is being attacked. What does Jesus do to protect his wife? Does he just watch? Yes. Yes, because it is necessary in the prophetic scheme of things that this is what's going to happen. Individual Christians get attacked. Collectively, Christians get attacked. Jesus is not defending his own wife. Right now, in the Middle East, in China, in these places where Christians are systematically targeted, he's never stepping up and doing miracles, and he could obviously destroy the enemies of Christianity right now. But he's not. Why? Is it because that's just not how God thinks anymore? Nonsense. God knows that this is evil. It is unjust. It is wrong what is happening. And he is saving his judgment for the return of Christ, the establishment of the millennial kingdom, and judgment day. He is delaying his judgment and deferring to the Father and saying the Father will take care of this when the time comes. He is not saying, I have to defend my wife right now, my bride right now. So even there, if you want to use Christ as our example, we are given the whole analogy over and over again that we are the bride of Christ, and yet Christ is permitting evil things to happen to the church constantly because he knows that the judgment day is going to come, and that's when the Father is going to sort out good from evil and permanently judge those who are wicked and reward those who have been patient. And so it's a horrible thing to imagine your wife being attacked, obviously, but at the same time, it has happened thousands and thousands of times, and I have to say, if you're just a practical person, you're imagining, again, we talked about the sparrows falling without God knowing. There is no random attack happening. This is a fantasy in your head that plays, because you watch movies and you see TV shows where random violence happens and you think, what would I do? Would I be a hero? Would I be a badass? Would I step up? And what would I do? Blah, blah, blah. You're telling yourself a story that is fictional over and over in your head of what would I do in this scenario? And that scenario is not real. That is your masculine instinct, obviously, a good instinct to protect people you love, a natural good instinct. But in the New Testament, in the kingdom of God, that is no longer the rules we survive by, not the rules we operate on, is to defend your property, attack your enemies, win, and try to do whatever you can to survive. That is just not the paradigm. And we read from Revelation chapter 2, Jesus talking to the churches and saying, be patient to death, tolerate your enemies, and do not be afraid. So Petra Sale says, you are telling fathers, brothers, uncles, police, and so on not to protect. Men are supposed to protect children and women. Well, I think you can protect children and women without killing anyone else. And I have also made that case. I guess you just joined the stream, but I have also said that. So I can see that you're accusing me of saying that we shouldn't do anything to protect anyone, but that is not what I'm saying. I believe that that Jesus does, for example, in my own life, I think God has protected me every single day of my life since I was born. He has protected me in that sense. And so when I say that he doesn't protect the church, what I mean is he's not striking people down in the act of them doing something evil. He is not miraculously intervening to kill our enemies. I believe God is protecting everybody who is supposed to be protected. And when he allows something evil to happen, it is for our edification, and we learn something, and we have to forgive our enemies, and we have to, learn to not seek vengeance and all that kind of stuff. And so, you've misunderstood me here if you think that I'm saying you shouldn't do anything to protect anyone, you shouldn't take any preventions. Yes, I lock my doors. I use common sense to try to avoid problems, and I do believe Jesus protects us and God protects us, but he does it without setting an example of violence, and he is saving his vengeance for the judgment day. Ambizzle says, I was on a Christian dating app, matched with a deceived man. God showed up to him, told him that he was to unalive the person Baal is inhabiting. He was convinced I was in contact with demons. Girl, that is freaky. That is Christian dating apps. I would assume that Christian dating apps are full of very suspicious people, because evil people love to prey on Christians, and there you are in a environment where they can pick on you, and I believe a bunch of deranged people would go to Christian dating apps, that's for sure. So let's see. Petra Sales is still saying God gave us the ability to protect ourselves. When you stand for nothing, you fall for anything. I don't walk in fear. I also won't allow people to hurt me. You know, here's what I'll say to you, Petra Sales. In that case, God has not given you any authorization to defend yourself with violence, okay? You won't find it in the New Testament. So what that means is that you are taking judgment into your own hands. You are saying, I am the judge. I get to decide. And it means that you will, therefore, have to give account to God someday. So I hope that you never encounter the scenario where you have to play out your fantasy you have in your head of being a hero. But if you do, you will have no excuse, because you were warned, not only in the Bible, but by me and by anyone else who you've heard say this, that is not what you are called to do as a servant of the kingdom of God. You will be accountable to God, not to me. I don't care. I mean, whatever you do, I'm not going to know what your life is like. You are going to have to answer to God why you took somebody else's life, if that's what you do. Because that person, maybe God had a different plan for them. Maybe they do something evil today and then they repent tomorrow. Maybe they do something today and they go on to do much worse things, and then that was also the plan. So when you decide to step up and become the judge and you want to defend yourself, just know you will be accountable for that. I would rather be innocent and victimized than stand up for myself and assert my rights and then say, hey, God, aren't you impressed with how I decided to handle the situation because I know better than you do? You know, like I said, I take common sense precautions, but I do not intend on avenging myself. And in that sense, I just want you to know, be careful what you do, because we have a judge, and you are never given permission from Jesus or from the New Testament to use violence and to, it literally says those who will save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for Christ's sake will gain it. Like, the warnings are so, it says if somebody strikes you on the one side of your face, turn and let them strike the other side as well. Like, how do you not understand how obviously it's saying you have to allow yourself to be attacked? Like, can we just go read that actual verse? It's such a basic teaching of Jesus, but people just want to reject what Jesus says because it goes against our human instincts. Luke chapter 6, okay? Luke chapter 6. Let's start in verse 22. Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you and insult you, and reject your name as evil because of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, because great is your reward in heaven. You see the logic. You get hated and abused and mistreated in this life. God rewards you in the next life. Very simple teaching. Understand that, accept that, embrace that as part of what it means to be a Christian. It says, for their fathers treated the prophets in the same way. The prophets. We are being compared to prophets if we allow ourselves to be hated and mistreated and yet not worry about it and just rejoice because we are going to be rewarded for everything we suffer. Verse 24 says, of Luke chapter 6, it says, "But woe to those who are rich, for you have already received your comfort. Woe to those who are well fed now, for you will hunger. Woe to you who laugh now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all men speak well of you, for their fathers treated the false prophets in the same way." Verse 27, "But to those of you who listen, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you." I'm waiting for you to explain how your philosophy lines up with this. "Do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who mistreat you." Doesn't sound very much to me like get weapons and defend yourself and be prepared to fight back. That does not sound like what he's saying to me. Verse 29, "If someone strikes you on one cheek, turn to him the other also." Wait a minute. Physical violence? Striking you on the face? Striking is not a friendly gesture. It is a attack. It is assault in the absolute sense of the word. If someone just randomly was to smash you in the face, the correct response as a Christian is right here. It is nowhere else. Jesus gives you the most black and white, any child can understand it, teaching. If someone strikes you on the face, on one side of your face, turn to him the other also, meaning offer it up, as you can also hit me here if you want. And if someone takes your cloak, do not withhold your tunic as well. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what is yours, do not demand it back. If someone steals from you, do not even tell them to give it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. So, obviously, this is where somebody will say, that gives me an excuse to do bad things because I do think that I should be punished. If I attack somebody, they should attack me back, blah, blah, blah. That's your own human flipping of everything you just heard upside down to try to cancel what Jesus said. It says, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them expecting nothing in return. Then your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. So, please, just whatever you end up doing, I don't control it. I'm not going to judge you. I don't know you. But whatever you do, I'm just advising you, listen to this. This is the path to life, to eternal life. It is not self-defense. It is not standing up for yourself. Be a victim. Be somebody who people can take advantage of. Be the loser, the pathetic idiot that everyone in the world will say is stupid, just like they say Jesus is stupid, and that Jesus is a pathetic example. They love Caesar. They love heroes. They love generals. They love those who stand up and fight and kill and whatever. Jesus did not do any of those things. Jesus is mocked. Be that kind of person, because that is what Jesus is telling you to do. That is the only way I know how to say it as plainly as that, by just reading what Jesus himself said. And literally in this sense, obviously he does not talk about family members here. But can you imagine Jesus saying, and if somebody you love is attacked, then all of this doesn't count anymore. Then go and, kill them and attack them and, whatever. I mean, he literally is saying, do not even ask for something back when somebody steals it from you. Almost every single man at this point of history where Jesus is talking to was married and had kids. We are the ones living in a time when everyone is in a messed up dating relationship and they don't have any wife and kids. They got married young and they had kids young. So all of the men he's talking to here are fathers. Now, if somebody were to steal a bunch of valuable stuff from a father, does that not hurt his kids? So why is Jesus saying to not even ask for anything back if somebody steals what's yours, if that's going to have a negative impact on his family? And if the father of the family gets beaten and struck in the face and maybe goes blind or killed or severely injured, does that help the family or does that hurt the family? And if they hate you and slander you and they ostracize you and they kick you out of society and you become exiled, does that hurt the family or does that help the family? Obviously, everything that the father of a family suffers is going to hurt the family as well. But Jesus is still giving the same advice to all of his followers, and he knows that his followers are going to be a lot of married men. So if you listen to this and you're a married man and you have kids, the implication is it doesn't matter that you have kids, you still have to do this. And I will tell you, because if there's one thing I want to do is to be real with you. Jesus literally says, if you love your kids more than him, you are not worthy of him. If you love your wife, your mother, your father more than Jesus, more than what he's saying right here, you are not worthy of Jesus. That's a very stark, perhaps harsh thing to have to say, but he literally says that. He who loves father and mother more than me is not worthy of me. He who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Okay? So if your children are your excuse to disobey the creator of the universe, the Savior, God, that excuse is not going to hold up. You have to listen to this, and your family is not an excuse to disobey. I'm sorry. It's not my words. It is Jesus' words. If I was in charge of the system, I would rewrite all these rules. I'm not celebrating that these are the rules. Okay? It's tough. But that is the system we are given. And the reasoning for it is that we get rewarded in the next life. It is about looking at the whole picture of reality and saying, this world is basically a test. God gives, God takes away. This world is evil. I am not invested in this world. I choose to put my money somewhere else. Jesus literally talks about not storing up treasures here on earth. You're supposed to be looking at the next life. If you have kids and you have a wife, you have some obligations. Jesus does not give you any leeway based on that. That's your choice. You have to deal with that. His instructions are not tailored to only single men who do not have those obligations. So, this guy, Petra Sale, says, this guy has never been assaulted. LOL. He seems to have had a comfortable life. It's not true, actually. I have been assaulted. And when I was younger, I fought back. And I felt bad about fighting back. And as an adult, guess what? I've actually, because I'm a Christian, and I was a Christian by the time I was an adult, you can actually avoid a lot of things that would be an assault, would be a conflict, by just actually being loving and by being intelligent. So, if you have the instinct of being defensive and of wanting to stand up for yourself and fight back, you're inviting a lot more conflict into your daily life because you are poised to attack and to counterattack. And so you're going to be asking for more trouble. If you genuinely love people and you want to love your enemies, it's very hard for them to fully commit to doing something like assault you. Often they will feel ashamed if you are kind to them. And I don't mean a stupid kind of feigned fake kindness. I mean, there's something wrong with them. The people who would assault you have something wrong in their hearts. They don't understand Christ. And so they're not thinking correctly. And if you reach out to them on a human level, you might find that actually they are basically begging for help. That's the kind of thing I have discovered by listening to what Jesus says. And if you have the attitude that I have rights and I need to stand up for myself and I'm just waiting for an opportunity to fight back, well, good for you, but other people will sense that and see that, and then you will lock with them and you'll match each other's fantasies of getting into a fight, and then you'll have a fight. But that's not what Jesus says. So you're wrong in judging me in that way, and that's fine, because being slandered is literally what Jesus said that will happen to us, and we are blessed when we are slandered. So that's fine. Rooster Illusion says, what's your opinion on people who have near-death experiences who claim to meet Jesus? That's a good question. I watched a documentary on near-death experiences either earlier this year or last year. I can't remember when. And I found it very interesting. I think that near-death experiences are a real thing. And I think that we shouldn't trust anything that we see in them. But that no matter what you were to experience in that near-death experience, even if you think you met Jesus, you still have to just obey the Bible. You know, it doesn't actually change the doctrine that you are given from the Bible. From what I have seen, in some cases, the things that Jesus, I'm going to put Jesus in quotation marks there, Jesus tells these people does actually line up with the Bible. And, Jesus will tell them to forgive others who they're holding a grudge against and that kind of stuff. And those people do not listen. It's kind of amazing. People who have these near-death experiences, they claim to meet Jesus, and then they don't actually follow the advice of Jesus, even when they think they've personally met him. So it really goes to show that it is hard to listen to Jesus, and you have to have the Holy Spirit in order to follow these crazy instructions that go against all of our instincts. And so I think that's the weird thing about near-death experiences, that they're not as transformative as you would think, even if you supposedly meet Jesus. And Jesus is going to come back to this earth someday, and he's going to be hated by the nations. They're going to try to go to war against him. So do not be fooled. Jesus is hated by this world, and it is hard to listen to him sometimes, unless you have the Holy Spirit and you want to escape the logic of this world. Somebody says the greatest war on Christianity exists among believers. We are imploding from within. Maybe. I think that there's a lot of false Christians, and there always have been. There were Gnostics in the very first century who tried to mix Christianity with other doctrines, and they were not true Christians. And Jesus makes it very clear that his sheep know his voice, and they follow him regardless of all the deception in the world. So there's really nothing wrong. That's one of these weird One of the weird things about really internalizing what the Bible teaches is that nothing is really going wrong in God's plan. Every single person who is supposed to be saved gets saved. Every single person who is not supposed to be saved doesn't get saved. We're still supposed to pray for people because we don't know who is who. But actually, the war that's happening is going perfectly according to plan. The great falling away, the great tribulation, all the horrible things that are going to happen in prophecy, those are God's plans. God is the one who set up and wrote those plans in advance. 2,000 some years ago, he gave us this writing. And in the Old Testament, even older prophecies, which I talk about in my book, not Fire in the Rabbit Hole, but Rise of the Beast. The Rise of the Beast is about how God is the one controlling the rise of the beast. God is the one who dictates what the world powers are and how long they last and how much power they have over Christians. So I wrote this little book. It's broken down into 21 lessons. And some of the lessons are about, definitely about God's sovereignty and his plan, and that nobody can challenge his plans. And so even in the Old Testament, you have the beast kingdom waging war against the saints, waging war against the followers of God, and winning. But hey, doesn't that mean that God is losing? No, it doesn't, because that's God's plan. It's a little bit hard to understand why he would do that to his own people, but God has the bigger plan. You're supposed to love your enemies. It says, you should be the sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Luke chapter 6, verse 35. God is kind to the wicked and the ungrateful. So you're supposed to be merciful just as your Father is merciful. So there's all sorts of logic here for why any war that is happening within Christianity is not a big deal. Do not get worried about it. Live your life. You are going to be judged individually. The big picture, all the crazy stuff that's happening in the world, it's not your concern. God is in the driver's seat. God is taking care of everything. Not even a single sparrow falls out of the sky without God knowing about it. All the hairs of your head are counted. That's what Jesus said. And so there's nothing to be afraid of. To the extent that there is a war, focus on your own self, on your own role within that war, what you are going to represent. Do not worry about, the deceptions and falling away of other people as much. And I'm not saying that you are. I'm just saying my advice to people in general is to relax. If you're a Christian, trust God. Do not fantasize about terrible things and evil things happening and how you're going to have to respond to this or that crisis and tragedy and all that stuff. Let it happen. Trust God's plan and focus on yourself, reforming yourself to be more like Christ, who trusted God even when he was on the cross being killed, and he gave his life, and God rewarded him. So, some people are agreeing with me that, not really agreeing with me, with what Jesus said. I just read what Jesus said, that we can't avenge ourselves. Follower of Christ says, the next life's going to be epic and it's forever. That is what we need to be celebrating. It's literally true. If you read, there's going to be a new creation. We're going to live with God forever. He's going to personally be there and we can speak with him. I love to talk about new creation and how epic it is going to be. I think that we are going to have a physical new creation, a reality that you can touch and taste and smell and feel. And it is going to be full of amazing things to discover and to explore and to build and to be creators in the small sense of the word, not like God is the creator, but we'll be creators. We'll be able to collaborate with all the other cool people who love God and create wondrous things. And I do not believe it is just New Jerusalem. When you read my book, Maybe Everyone is Wrong, I talk about new creation in there. And it's like the final area of the book, obviously, because that's the final thing we see in Revelation. And I talk about how, if you actually look at what the Revelation says, it says, New Jerusalem comes out of heaven, the new heaven, not this heaven, the next heaven that gets created, which we have no understanding of what that's going to be like. There could be completely different suns and moons and planets and stars. It will come out of that heaven, and it will be placed upon a giant hill, a giant mountain. Now, what does that tell you? That already tells you that in eternity, in the new creation, there is going to be a gigantic mountain, landmass, and then the city that our homes are in, where Jesus is and where God is, that is going to be on top of this physical mountain. And it says that there's going to be months and seasons, and there's going to be a tree in that city that has cycles of different fruits that it gives. And so you have months and seasons, which would imply days and nights and passage of time in an interesting way that can be tracked. It is not one constant state that doesn't change. There's a lot of very subtle implications when you look at the description of new creation. And I totally believe at this point, I would have to see some evidence to the contrary to believe otherwise, that we are going to be allowed to be empowered humans with a gigantic planet, or who knows what shape of creation it's going to be, but we're going to have this gigantic space to play in and to explore and to do cool stuff in. And we know that we're not going to have to get hungry, we're not going to die, we're not going to get tired, all these types of things. And so basically we get to just, I don't want to use a crude analogy, but if you were a fan of like Minecraft and like games where you just get to sort of explore this giant space and build what you want and do what you want in, it kind of sounds like that to me. Like you just get to be this part of this millions of people who are going to be there, possibly billions of people, who knows how many people, but and you'll get to enjoy this new creation without Satan being there, without deception, without worldly powers condemning and all the injustice and all these things. It's really something to think about, to sit back and think about how awesome the next life is, because it's not sitting on clouds and floating in the air and just singing songs and as much as we will want to praise God forever and ever and ever and never stop praising him. I believe that there's going to be an actual lifestyle there that will be amazing, and we'll be able to do what we would want to do in this life, which is to be botanists and chemists and engineers and songwriters and poets and all the things that we would love to do here to serve God. We'll actually be able to do that in the next life. And who knows, we might even be able to go to other planets. There's no rules limiting us that we are given so far for what we have to do or can't do in the next life. And we're going to be free from sin, so we don't have to worry about that either. So, guys, I have to jump off very soon. But I really appreciate people joining. We got almost 10,000 likes. Can we get to the 10,000 like mark on TikTok here? Thank you to those who are tuning in on YouTube. I did not get a lot of questions on YouTube, but that's okay. If you guys are interested in listening, that's fine. I missed a couple of comments, questions on TikTok. Let's see if I can quickly get to some other ones before I have to go. My thoughts on the Book of Jubilees. Let me just quickly look that up because I don't offhand remember what that is. Book of Jubilees is an ancient Jewish apocryphal text of 50 chapters considered canonical by the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, as well as by Beta Israel, Ethiopian Jews. Jubilees is considered one of the pseudepigrapha by the Eastern Orthodox, Catholic, and Protestant churches, meaning it was written under a false name. Apart from the Beta Israel community, the book is not considered canonical with any of the denominations of Judaism. It presents a history of the division of the days of the law and of the testimony of the events of the years of their weeks, of their jubilees throughout all the years of the world, as the Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai when he went up to receive the tables of the law and the commandments. Yeah, I mean, it seems like this is something that is a forgery. It is not real. And so I would reject it. I would have to see a good argument for the other way, but I believe in general, those who compiled the Bible did a pretty good job of weeding out fake texts and pseudepigrapha, as they call it, which is just a book written under a false name. So it's kind of like the Book of Enoch and some of these other texts that didn't make it into the Bible. It's not that they were removed from the Bible. That's a wrong way of saying it, because the Bible was compiled much later than the books were written. Those who were compiling the Bible had to decide what to include and what not to include, and I think they had some pretty good rules for how to do it. And so I wouldn't see why we have to care about the Book of Jubilees if it's not even written by the person it says it's written by, and it talks about all these things that the person is faking knowledge on, basically. Jerry says, are you a pre-tribulation rapture believer? No, I talked about that earlier. I believe the pre-tribulation rapture is a very unfortunate misunderstanding of some of the Bible's teachings, although I also think that if you're a pre-tribulation rapture believer and then the tribulation happens and you get surprised, guess what? The rapture didn't happen, and then you die. I don't think you get punished for that, because in Revelation chapter 6, with the breaking of the fifth seal, you actually see a group of Christians who do not understand why God is not intervening and avenging them, and that their brothers and sisters are being killed on earth, and they basically say to God, why are you not avenging us? Because obviously they have a misunderstanding. So I think the Bible kind of predicts a pre-tribulation rapture belief, actually. I think the Bible weirdly predicts that people will misunderstand it. It's a very strange thing to think about, but it predicts that that's what's going to happen. And then God just tells these people, here are your white robes. You just have to relax and rest until the rest of the people are killed. And then he goes in and does what he does, the rest of Revelation. So I think the false teaching of the pre-tribulation rapture is unfortunate, but it's not a very big deal as long as when the tribulation does happen, you still are faithful to the death, and you still get rewarded, and you still get to go to heaven. Let's see here. A couple more questions. Wealthgistics says, so why did God make it harder to love him as years go by, 1300s compared to 2030? Does this mean we are born at the right time? Sorry, sir, I do not understand what you mean by that. Why would it be harder to love God now than in the 1300s? I don't know. I personally find it very easy to love God, because I see prophecy being fulfilled, and I therefore understand that all of the prophecies are going to be fulfilled, and therefore we're going to win. The good guys will have the victory in the end. Satan will be defeated. There will be a new creation, a resurrection, all of these things that I'm looking forward to. I feel very reaffirmed and confident. Obviously, I wrote these books. Maybe everyone is wrong. If you guys want to look that up, I feel very confident that we are experiencing prophecy and that it's all going to turn out okay. If we die, we die, but the next life is what matters, and so that's fine. Angelo says, are your books on Audible? No, they are not. I should look into putting them on Audible, but I am not on Audible. I had a podcast where I was just reading them for free, and then Spotify bought the service I was using and changed the terms of service so that I had to give away my intellectual property to them if I wanted to have my audiobooks on there, and so I rejected that. I deleted my Spotify account, and now I do not have my podcast available, but I'm sorry about that, but I can't be giving Spotify my intellectual property for free, so that was a scummy move on their part, and I want to make my books available in audio form some other way, but I'm pretty busy, and I feel very discouraged by that, so I don't know where to go next. Joking Comic says, when are you normally on here? I am not normally on here. You caught a very rare live stream. I do not make this a regular thing, although I enjoy it every time. Thank you for the 10,000 likes, everyone. That's huge. That's very good. I wish I had a schedule where I could do it more often, but maybe I will, next week, Friday. We'll see. I really enjoyed this. I love being challenged. I love people even accusing me of things, because guess what? If you slander me, you're just blessing me. I mean, if somebody attacks me, you're actually just blessing me. If somebody were to randomly hit me or steal my stuff, you're actually just blessing me. When you're a Christian, it is impossible to lose. That is something people don't understand. When you suffer as a Christian, and you, especially if it's because you're a Christian and you adhere to the Bible, you get blessed for all of those things. So there's no way to really lose, because either you have a peaceful existence and you get to prosper and serve the kingdom that way, or you get suffering and then God rewards you. So there's no reason to worry about it. Even if somebody hates me, that just means you just put another point on my scoreboard that God is going to reward me for. So I'm not worried about it. Doing my videos, doing my books, things like that, people who misunderstand it or hate me because of the things I said, I like to be if somebody can teach me otherwise and they can rebuke me and I'm corrected, I love that. But if it's just accusing me or slandering me, that doesn't bother me at all. So thank you very much, guys, for watching. Maybe we should do this next week, Friday. It seems like people are enjoying it. Thank you for the hearts and the emojis and everything. If you guys do want to follow more of my stuff, I highly recommend you go to Substack. I know you guys might not even like reading because you're just watching a live stream and you don't feel like reading stuff. But I do have a Substack. It is called Winter Christian. So if you go to winterchristian, one word, .substack.com, I write articles on all sorts of controversial topics and Bible studies and politics and things of the day and all these things. And I think you guys would enjoy it if you enjoyed this stream. winterchristian.substack.com. So, and you can also pay me if you want to be a paid subscriber there, a paid supporter. I appreciate everybody who supports my work and things that I do there. You don't have to. I also have a day job, but thank you guys. I'm going to have to cut it off there and go, but God bless you, and keep reading your Bible and keep believing the things that it says, because if you read it and you don't actually internalize it as something you believe, then you're sort of missing the point. So do your own study. Don't just listen to me, but read it and believe what God tells you in there, because it's true. Thank you. Thank you to everyone on YouTube as well. I do want to do more live streams. KC says, thanks, Terry. The Substack is great to all. Henry and Susie says, thank you. Thank you for joining. It's very encouraging to have the people come out and watch. This was a pretty long stream, and I really enjoyed it. So, wait, Kenan said, do you think we'll have punishment in this life due to past sins? I never answered that question, so let me answer that now. Do you think we will have punishment in this life due to past sins? I don't think God sets about to punish us in the sense of just punishing us. I think that every Christian suffers different things, temptations and failures and everything. And then we have to deal with the consequences of that. We have to deal with the guilt of that. But I don't think that it's like an Old Testament style, you broke my covenant, now I punish you and you are cursed and that kind of thing. I think in the New Testament, we are written into the book of life. We have promises, and God is basically educating us until we die. And all the things ups and downs and failures we have and things like that are necessary parts of the growing process. And then we are sanctified by the blood of Jesus, and we're safe. But God doesn't expect us to be perfect. He knows we're still going to sin. We have a sin nature still, even when we have the Holy Spirit, and there's war with each other. Paul talks about the war between his flesh and his spirit. And so that's why we ask for forgiveness every day still. And Jesus wants to forgive us. Jesus does not want to condemn us. He does not want to punish us. He wants to have us be effective and learn and serve his kingdom. And so I do not think that we get punished in that sense. But God might humble us very severely so that we get our priorities straight. And you can think of that as a punishment, but it's not the Old Testament style of punishment. So I hope that answers your question too. I hope this video is going to be available as a video on demand on YouTube on my channel, and people can go back and watch it again if you want. But either way, thank you for watching, guys, and I have to jump off, but